Within the lands of a far-off place, Lisha is a kingdom that spans 3 spheres of the known planes. Within it are streets of jeweled splendor and golden sunshine. These are not the only lands of Lisha though, there are many diverse environments, cultures, and civilizations that dwell here, among the different planes of existence. Lands that are unforgiving, primal, and filled with wild beasts. Jungles that reach up to the sky, can take a person without ever leaving a trace of that person ever being there. Planets so unforgiving, the ground itself has the power to kill. Within the center of a divine throne room, a throne sits upon a dais. The dais rises about 2 feet above the floor, and each side of this dais has steps that lead up onto it. Transparent crystals were used in order to create most of the things within this throne room, making the environment bright and full of reflections. Pillars stretch high within the room, to a ceiling that is so high it can barely be seen. Rumor have it that these pillars don't even connect to the ceiling, and their mysteries are but a wonder. They too cast off reflections of a mystical blue aura of beauty. Strange symbols are carved into these pillars and the dais as well. Energy flows along the surface of these pillars, swaying like snakes, swimming upon the surface of a stream. The bright reflective glow of the throne, dais, and divine pillars cast off of the walls, and down onto a mysterious pool of visions below. Visions bounce in and out within the waters of this mystical pool. A blue aura hangs over it, and the water itself never sits still, as if it is boiling in low temperatures. The water itself though, isn't cold at all. Still, it produces a mist that rises above itself into the divine throne room above. As energy springs up from the mystical pool of visions, an astute, discerned watcher stands above it, staring down into its magical waters, watching the visions as they pass in and out. As if he is watching, and deciphering those visions as they happen. Harnessing the great secrets that this pool brings, by deciphering its hidden messages. His name is Zuthra, and he is known as the Overking of Lisha. Zuthra's eyes glow a bright blue, with a gleaming transparent tiara upon his head. His long curly hair and a matching beard hang down past his shoulders and chest. As Overking, it is his responsibility to secure the future of his bloodline. That is his utmost responsibility above all others. Even more important than the responsibilities of being the Overking. Seclusion is the only life that the Overking knows. He must live his life alone, so seduction is a part of the role he must play. Energy spills upward out of the pool of visions, as Zuthra raises his arms into the air. This energy flows through his body, as Zuthra closes his eyes, and visions of the past enter his mind. The pillars begin to glow, as priests dressed in shrouded cloaks gather around him. Zuthra places his hands into the water of the mystical pool of visions, and opens his eyes as he raises his arms into the air. Lowering his arms, Zuthra takes the hand of one of the priests standing beside him, and they are all now circling the pool. These memories seem to transfer between them, like a conduit transferring energy from its source to its outlet. Afterwards, the priest returned to a corner within the throne room, and this ritual is then repeated over again, when Zuthra raises and lowers his arms. At the end of each ceremony, a priest will then announce in a loud voice that is heard across the entire throne room, the act of providence is knowledge of things to come, before they happen.
All intelligent beings live within the known planes of existence, and there are 6 known realms within these planes. The first 3 are ruled by Lisha, and are called the higher heavens of Lisha, Protean, and the cardinal realm. Then there are the 3 darker realms, ruled by the Draco, a reptilian race of beings. These are the Ophidian, Serpentine, and Saurian realms. There is a lot of diversity throughout all of these realms with many environments, cultures, civilizations, and beasts that run wild within them. Within these cultures and civilizations, some people live basic lives, day to day, while others travel the stars. Some travel between the realms, while others know nothing outside their own world. Some realms are uncivilized, primal, and filled with every kind of crawling thing, but some are more civilized. Tribal beings are spread within every realm, culture, and civilization abroad. Civilizations travel the stars and have advanced civilizations, while other civilizations, without technology, are everywhere too. Some with a moral outlook on things, while others can travel the stars and have advanced technologies, but have no value for life. The dominant species within Lisha are humans, while the dominant species within Draco are the Draconian, of course. Slavery is practiced throughout all of the realms, except for the higher heavens of Lisha. Not every culture and civilization within each of the realms practice the use of slaves though, and are against it. Others destroy cities and villages for the single purpose of collecting slaves. It is the survival of the fittest, and only the strong shall survive in unforgiving and barren environments that are able to kill. Just as much cruelty is committed by humans as well as by the Draco.
The Great Seduction is the esoteric teaching handed down through generations of overkings. It can be performed while the target is asleep, awake, in the real world, or in some illusionary world created by the overking. Survival of his bloodline is the most important thing to an overking, one of many who came before him. Each responsible for finding wives, performing the Great Seduction, and consecrating his marriage to them through impregnation. Memories of consummating his marriage with Illibu entered Zuthra's mind. He would watch her through the pool of visions, and thought she was the beautifulest creature that he had ever seen. His desire to have her overtook him, and he committed the Great Seduction, making her his wife. Zuthra waited until she fell asleep, and he visited her in a dream. Illibu was from the plains of Protean, on an unforgiving planet called Lucius, and was a Cistercian maiden, who survived in the tunnels below her planet's surface. Her desires were simple, she was only interested in the sight of a beautiful, masculine man. One with the eyes that would hypnotize her, and the hands that would caress her with ecstasy. Zuthra was exactly what Illibu desired, so seducing her wasn't too hard.
Memories of seducing another wife, Senti, a sentinel huntress, who lived among the wild, entered Zuthra's mind. She was a huntress, and because of her desire for the hunt, Zuthra was able to seduce her. Zuthra came to her in a dream, taunting her with visions of a beautiful beast. In the distance, she glanced the most beautiful beast that she had ever seen. She raised her bow and aimed straight, then let go of the quiver, only to miss the target. Her blood began to boil, she did not like missing her target. She followed her prey, and when the sun began to fall, she laid under a tree to rest because the weather was beautiful that day. She was tempted by a dream that Zuthra implanted within her mind, until finally, she was impregnated by Zuthra, and through consummation, she became his wife. Zuthra remembered how hypnotic she was, with her slim, but muscular body. Her hair was a bright golden blonde, and she had glowing blue eyes. Memories of seducing Tiana, his third wife, entered Zuthra's mind. She was the ruthless one among them, but beautiful nonetheless. Each night she would sleep over a torture chamber, as her slaves were beaten to death. She enjoyed the sounds of them begging for mercy. Zuthra seduced her out of bloodlust, disguising himself as her slave, as she tortured him out of bloodlust. Her desires grew, and she was seduced by Zuthra. He impregnated her as well, making her his third wife. Memories of seducing another wife, Senti, a sentinel huntress, who lived among the wild, entered Zuthra's mind. She was a huntress, and because of her desire for the hunt, Zuthra was able to seduce her. Zuthra came to her in a dream, taunting her with visions of a beautiful beast. In the distance, she glanced the most beautiful beast that she had ever seen. She raised her bow and aimed straight, then let go of the quiver, only to miss the target. Her blood began to boil, she did not like missing her target. She followed her prey, and when the sun began to fall, she laid under a tree to rest because the weather was beautiful that day. She was tempted by a dream that Zuthra implanted within her mind, until finally, she was impregnated by Zuthra, and through consummation, she became his wife. Zuthra remembered how hypnotic she was, with her slim, but muscular body. Her hair was a bright golden blonde, and she had glowing blue eyes. Memories of seducing Tiana, his third wife, entered Zuthra's mind. She was the ruthless one among them, but beautiful nonetheless. Each night she would sleep over a torture chamber, as her slaves were beaten to death. She enjoyed the sounds of them begging for mercy. Zuthra seduced her out of bloodlust, disguising himself as a slave, as she tortured him out of bloodlust. Her desires grew, and she was seduced by Zuthra. He impregnated her as well, making her his third wife.
Imams were responsible for ruling in the Overking's place when he wasn't there to rule himself. Eventually, mistrust among the people with whispers of draconian infiltrators, influencing the Imams, began to emerge. Zuthra, aware of the rumors, investigated, and found to his dismay, that some of the rumors were correct. Dealing in illegal trade, and the emergence of a drug created by the Draco, called Soma, quickly spread across the realms. Eventually, the only responsibilities of the Imams consisted of trade negotiations with the merchants. By the time this took place though, the merchants were already being influenced by the Draco, conspiring with them in illegal trade. Merchants and warlords are never to be trusted. Unethical dealings, among each other, in slave trading and illegal dealings with the Draco. The merchant class is built up with their own federation, dictating to the people who they can do trade with and who they can't. In order for its citizens to do any trade, Lisha has to trade within these federations and nowhere else. This is proclaimed by law. While enforcing trade agreements, these same people deal with warlords, who travel freely within the realms plundering citizens, and taking slaves for trade. Forcing citizens to pay tribute for protection. Warlords make big profit off of being the middleman between the merchants and the Draco too. Trading in slaves and genetic research material. In these lands, most of its people didn't see good or evil, and right or wrong. The ones who did believe in something though, believed in darkness and the light. They believed that there was also a balance in all things too. Most believe in survival of the fittest though, and only the strong survive.
Prepared to sacrifice his own life for the Draco, Opta ventures into Lisha by way of a transport ship. He made his way to the Cardinal Realm, and established contact with thriving draconian tribal settlements in that realm. From this point of operations, Opta began to teach the ways of the Draken, converting humans into followers. Sending with him an exotic drug, eventually known as Soma, the intentions of the Draco were clear. Their eventual takeover of Lisha was well planned, and with the use of Soma, it didn't look too far off either. Soma had the ability to control the person using it utterly and completely, turning them into mindless slaves. Opta began in the Cardinal Realm, converting underhanded merchants and its inhabitants into followers. Soon, a cult of followers grew up around Obtu, and as more followers came, his influence grew. He was soon moving into Protean as well. Eventually, Opta had a tight hold not only on the merchants, but he also had control of imams as well. Most of the merchants were controlled by Soma, but not all of them. The ones who actually weren't controlled by the drugs and still traded with Obtu, did it out of pure greed.
As time went on, Obtu was finally captured, not in time though, the damage was already done. Zuthra's enemies were close at hand, and the final episodes of his kingdom's demise was within sight. Obtu was placed under close supervision by Zuthra's faithful sentinel guard, within the lower levels of the Divine Palace. Close to both the sentinels, and Zuthra himself. But as I mentioned before, this was only the beginning of the end for Zuthra. Ilabu was from an unforgiving planet, within the realm of Protean, and had to survive in underground tunnels in order to survive. She was honored by the act of becoming the wife of an Overking, and she didn't really have much for a future on the planet of Lucius, where she came from. Senti was a beautiful blonde huntress, who was desired by every man who encountered her. Marriage wasn't that big of a deal to her, the hunt was of more importance. Besides, her people were the honored guard of the Overking themselves. So, becoming the wife of an Overking only seemed logical to her. These two wives loved the idea of being queen, to a certain extent, considering one was a huntress, and the other, a Cistercian maiden. Tiana, though, was from a world that was harsh, whose society was ruled only by women, and saw no value in men, other than reproduction. Men in her world were nothing more than a subspecies, so becoming queen infuriated her. She vowed vengeance on Zuthra for what he had done, swearing to herself that she would be avenged for the treachery that was done to her. As Abtu was taken into custody, Zuthra had no idea that Abtu and Tiana had allied together against him.
A moment of clarity comes to Zuthra, when the reality of his wife's betrayal comes into light. Tiana was in league with Abtu and his cult of followers, prepared to move against Zuthra in an all-out assault for the throne of Lisha. The imams had been divided, the ones who were still loyal to the Overking, and the imams who betrayed him. These were the self-proclaimed satraps, now working hand in hand with Tiana, Abtu, and the Draken. Merchants and warlords followed the assault on Lisha as well. The imams who stayed loyal to Zuthra gathered their forces and quickly fortified the Overking's divine palace. Abtu was then subdued at this time, and taken to the divine palace, where he was placed within its lower levels. The news of this uprising was swift, and there wasn't much time in which to act. Not all of the sentinels and imams were able to rally. It was too late, it seemed, for some, as Tiana and her forces had finally gathered, and were ready to move on Zuthra and his forces. Soon, mighty cities within Lisha began to fall, one after the other. Fires raged as flames fell from the sky from the assault. With help from the Draconians, the final assault and destruction of Lisha was swift. Warlords, merchant ships, satraps, and Tiana were able to move quickly through the empire effortlessly. Armed by the Draconians with battle cruisers, Tiana moved through the barriers between each plane with ease. As she did, Tiana and her forces destroyed everything within their path. Nobody could ever guess the amount of guilt and shame that Zuthra felt in those final hours. As the enemy forces, and his wife, moved in for the final blow. With the death of so many of his people, all must have seemed lost for Zuthra.